this lesson, we're going to be looking at Try by John Mayer Trio off the album of the same name. It's a live recording featuring two guitarists, although Guitar2 is lower in the mix. I'll throw all his parts on the tail end of this lesson if anyone's interested. We have a humbucking pickup selected, so anything that dirties up for you will probably work. Let's look at some of the parts that Mayer is using in this song. He starts off unaccompanied without the band, and he's doing this. That goes on for quite a while and speeds up as he gets going. When the band joins in, he switches to a chord progression. He throws licks on at the tail end between each change like this. Then we're into the verse part where there's no licks. He's just doing the chord changes in this kind of rhythm. It's a real chunkity gallop to it. Then we have the chorus. The chorus starts off with high-picked chords like that. Keep that in mind when we get to that part. After that, we have a bit of a bridge, and that sounds like this. I'm turning the volume down so it's clear. First time we ever hear that chord. Then we stay on this chord 2 measures. Then we have the solo. After the solo, we come into this part that I'm just going to call the interlude, and that's this. And after that, there's a couple more solos, some slow downs, speed ups, reprises, but those are the parts in their essence. So let's get started. Measures 1 and 2 differ a tiny bit from the riff that follows, where it really starts getting into a groove. It's played a tiny bit slower. Sounds like this. Was measures 1 and 2. Let's look at measure 1. It all comes from this roughly a C minor shape with a broom handle grip. So we have the thumb on the E8, third finger on D10, and then we're barring the last 3 strings at the 8th fret, except we're muting 2 of these strings. We're muting the G and we're muting the A. In fact, all the chords in this song pretty much mute the A when the thumb is involved. So we're getting the C5. We have a root, and then the 5th. No third. It's very nondescript and non-committal. So measure 1 has us going from the octave on the D string to the low E, like that. Starts off. But it's not just like that. It's like a lot of dirt around it. We're hitting other strings and they're staccato, stopping them right after we play them. Then we have a muted down up like that. We go into this. So we're ending off with that lick. So starting at the A10, and that's measure 1. Measure 2 starts with a slide up. We're basically sliding up from a B7 to a C7. So let's look at that. The best way to do that is bar with your first finger the bottom 4 strings at the 7th fret. Put your second finger on the G8 and slide that up. In reality, we're only hearing the B and the G string notes, sorry. So we do our little slide, do our bottom E8, do a little muted strum, and you actually hear a tiny bit of the E8 in that muted strum. And then a down up muted, and this pull off again. So pull off on 11 to 8, and then pick 10 to 8, landing on the D10. Measure 3 starts like this. of vibrato, that last note. So if it starts off where measure 2 ends off. We replay that D10, D7, muted strum down, and then we have this obnoxious chord. And then we have a down, up, muted, and then that bass lick. And we hang on to that D10 and vibrato it a bit before starting over again. So I'll talk a bit about this obnoxious chord. When I hear people do covers on the internet, everyone plays this chord a different way. Or just everything that's doesn't sound right to my ears. This is what I think it is. You can take or leave it. We have the E8, B10, muted G, and open D sometimes. Sometimes we're bending up that B10 to get this kind of. So measure 3 from the top. Some vibrato with that last note to speed. And then we're into measure 4, and this is where it becomes repeatable. Measure 4 and 5, you just kind of keep recycling these until the band comes in. So measure 4 starts like this with a slide. So that slide is a single note slide. I'm using my third finger and sliding from G8 to 9. And then first finger's on D7, downstroke muted, that honky chord. You can bend it up if you want or just hit it like that, but we're going for the open D, muted G, and then the E10 and the E8. Then we have a muted down up and the pull-off lick, 11 to 8, and then pick 10, 8 on the G, and then 10 on the D, and we vibrato that and hang it on. Then we start repeating. We hit the D10 again. So you see how that repeats. Let's cycle it a couple times slow, starting on measure 4. And he just does that a whole bunch of times until the band comes in. When it gets going really fast, there's almost like a galloping on the first beat of each bar. One neat thing he does sometimes is on the bass lick there, on the A10 here, he hits the A10 3 times instead of 2. So instead of doing this, 1, 2, he goes 1, 2, 3, like that. And the way he does that is for the muted strums, like the down, up, on that up, he actually hits that 10, and then he just plays it like normal. I'll do it slow to show you what I mean. So we're looking at the 3 hits on the A10. As opposed to 2 hits. So that's something to be aware of too. And just before he goes into the band thing, he'll do this. He ends off with a muted upstroke, downstroke. Instead of vibratoing that last D10, it's... And then we're into the band intro. Measure 14 is when the band intro comes in, and Mayer is starting to do this chord progression that he's tacking little licks onto the end between the changes. So we have the C5, as we've talked about. Not playing that G, not playing that A. We're not playing that A at all, at A string at all, with any thumb chords. So then we have the A minor. It's almost the same as that chord, except we're playing that G string at the 5th fret. So we're barring at the 5th fret of the G, B, and E. Thumb is on the E5, and then we have our 3rd finger on the D7, A minor. Then we have F9. We have our 2nd finger on the A8, 1st finger on the D7, barring with the 3rd finger the bottom 3 strings at the 8th fret. A 9th chord is a major chord with a flattened 7th and an added 9. So if we, this is F, so if we do the F major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, take that down 1. That's our flattened 7. And then if we go 7, 8, 9, 9 at the B, 8 there is our 9th. That's how we get that. Then we return to the A minor. So this is what he plays. So we're doing that C5, and we're doing the top end of it with the, and then the bass end of it. Staccato, so we're kind of letting up on the pressure of the strings so that it doesn't ring out. We don't want to have, we want with the note stopping. And then we have that same down, up, muted, and that pull-off lick from 11 to 8. Pick from 10 to 8. 10 on the D. A bit of a slide as we change down to the A position. Same thing, we do the high part of the chord. Muted down, up. That's kind of unique. We're pre-leading a note, so that bass lick goes and then down to the D5, because we're in position now with our first finger to fret that F9 chord. So we're hitting the high part of it and the low part of it like we just did. High, low, down, up. We're doing a little, actually that's picked. And the pick notes are usually almost strum picked. So instead of picking individual notes, we're going with a lot of dirt on the other side, as you can see. So one more time on that F9 chord. Muted down, up. Back to the A. This one's fun. So for that lick, we're going to pick from D8 to D10, hammer on from G8 to 9, and then we're going to do a little strum where we're strumming the E and the B of the 8th at the 8th fret, coming up on the E, and then pulling off from 11 to 8 again. One more time. So the whole thing's slow. Continuing with measure 18, we're starting off with a muted chunk. So we're starting measure 18 with a muted chunk, sounding the chord, and then we have a down, up, muted with this lick afterwards. 8 to 10, down, up, muted, chord stab, and then 8, 10 on the A, 8, 10 on the D. So slow. Then we go down to the A position. We start off with a down, up, muted. 2 more down, ups, muted before going to this lick. Ending off on the D7. Then we have a down, up, muted. Ending off with more down, up, muted. And then going back to the A position. This time we're taking your pinky and putting it on the E8. And that's how that ends. So let's do the whole thing slow. We're going to get that funky little slide in there. And there is, just going into the singing verse, he does do a muted strum up down, but you could just as easily do the pull down and then work your way back up to the next position to start the verse. Measure 22 is verse 1 with a lyric. It takes 4 days to get to know me, but 2 to 1 to leave. Excellent lyric. And this is the rhythm. So with that C5 chord, we're going high, low, and then a down up scratch, and then low, high, low. So slow. And then we're sliding down to the A minor position. We're doing 2 low, and then 1 high, and then low. Scratch down up, 2 lows in a row, and then down up. So like that. Then we're going to the F9. We're doing 2 straight of the full chord before going into a high, low, high, low. So like that. And then A minor. So we're doing low, high, and then low. And then we're adding a note. With our pinky, we're hitting the G7, then low, lifting off, high, low, high. So slow. So we're getting this kind of melody within that chord. So slow, whole thing from the top. That's merely a suggestion. He plays every single verse differently. One thing that I'll just throw in as a value add, on a live, when I was kind of studying for this tutorial, I caught a live performance of him doing this, and he was doing this thing where he was starting off. When he got down to the A, his pinky materialized on the E8, so you have this. And then back to the F9, you've got that E8 sounding again. And then back to the A minor with that E8. So as a way of including this C note in every chord, like he did it in that one performance. I haven't seen it since, but it's anything you can do if you want. And make it your own. You'll learn to be a bit free with this. Let's look on to the next part. Measure 30 is the start of the first chorus. Let's learn a generic chorus because it's different every time. We're starting off with, these are the chords. We have a C7. Let me turn down the old distortion so we hear them. With the typical bar with the first finger. And he actually bars. He doesn't try to do the thumb thing for a change. And then we slide that up to D sharp. That's a D sharp 7. Then we have the F9. And then the A minor, and he does that, 2 passes of that. And the rhythm is, we go high-low on the C7 chord, like that. High-low, full. And then when it slides up to the D sharp 7, it sounds like this. So it's high-low, full, and then up, down, down, check out. So both together. And that's pretty consistent. The first pass on the C7, he kind of, it's minimalist. And then he adds extra strums in the D sharp 7. And then we're at the F9. What we're doing there is we're fretting the chord as normal, but our pinky reaches out and grabs the E10 and the B10 in this kind of rhythm. It's a bit of a double hammer-on. And then we end off with the high-low on the A minor. and then started it all off again. Second pass to C7, he adds some more strums. And then the last pass of the chorus, we get back into that at the A10, 2, and then come up on the D8 and 10, and we're back into the verse intro. So let's do that whole thing slow. And some more value add, that live concert I was telling you about, I noticed that when he was in these C7s, he would sometimes take his pinky and do like a B10. Hear that difference? Let's just clean it up a bit. And then the same thing for the D sharp 7. So there's a lot of little places that you can augment these chords and add these little embellishments. Even the E13 there, you can do some stuff. And he's embellishing here, and you can also add that inner melody we talked about before on the A minor. So lots of and that gets us back into the verse 2 intro. Measure 38 is the start of a small instrumental lead into verse 2. Sounds like this. So we've seen this slide up before. And that pull off. Down at this A minor position, we're doing this. Kind of bending with our first finger on the G5 and B5, going back down low, muted strum down, up, and then that lick. And then the F9. So that's normal, high, low, high, low. This is where it gets different. It's all about hitting the right two strings at the right time between the 8th and 10th frets with your first finger and third fingers. That's how it is. And then to the A part, ends off like that. Slow from the top. So after verse 2 and chorus 2, we come to the bridge, measure 58. That's the lyric. Take it easy now, just keep your damn mouth shut. A bit longer, 2 measures. So these are mostly chords we've seen before. We have the C7, as seen in the chorus. Here's a change. This is a D7. It is not the D sharp 7 that we're used to in the chorus. No, it's one semitone lower. It's C7 to D7. And then our F9 we've seen before. A minor. C7. D7, hang on this F9 for 2 measures, and then the solo, lead in. And we'll do the solo next. The solo starts at measure 66 with a tiny bit of a lead in from the last measure. Sounds like this. that bend is on the 18. Just a one step bend. So let's just play through it slow, then I'll take a look at some of the closer parts of it. So sliding into the G14. We actually start the solo on measure 66 here with this bend on the B15. After that, the notes are easy enough to hear. To the high E string on the 15th, bend it up, hit it unbent. A little incidental nudge on the 13. Then we're going to do a little pull off. At this point, there's a really neat hammer-on the open G string to the 14th fret while you're fingering the B13. And then the rapid fire lick is 13 on the B, and then pulling off from the 16, and then hitting the 15 on the G. You do 7 of these, and depending on how you pick them, you kind of start with a downstroke and hit the pull off with an upstroke. And then the next time you're hitting the pull off with a downstroke. So it's kind of awkward, it's hard to repeat. You can maybe just throw caution to the wind and just go and not worry about picking it at all. And then bending up on the B18. That's how we ended off. Just before we go on to the next part of the solo, I want to talk a bit about what box positions he's using up here for the solo. So to find that out, this is basically a C major, even though he has a C5 and he's not picking major, minor, A minor, and F9. The scales we're going to be using, think of this as a C major piece, and we're going to use the minor pentatonic. Everyone's heard that, eh? It's used everywhere. And then the C major pentatonic. So you can tell right away one of them's happy and one of them's sad. So let's hit this bass note on the C and play notes from the minor pentatonic. Sad. Whereas if we pedal that bass note on the C and hit some happy notes on the major pentatonic, it's happy. So what are the notes he's doing up here? That's happy, that's major. So to find out what box position scale it is, we're going to start with the major pentatonic here at C, which is, we're going to move it up at one box position. So that would be that scale there. I'll put these up on the screen, and then we'll arrive at the third position, major pentatonic box. And bingo, that's it. So that's the one he's using. For the first part of the scale, he's using the major pentatonic third position box. And then he switches to this, and that does not fit in that box. This is minor. So let's go back to the minor pentatonic at the C. Next one up from that is actually the same shape as the major pentatonic. And then after that we have, and that is our scale for the minor portion of the solo. So Mayer is effortlessly flipping between major and minor pentatonics here using these two scales. This is the first one for major, and then this one for the minor. So it's important to know where these come from and why he's playing them up there, and why it sounds a tiny bit weird. He's very good at this. Continuing from measure 71, we'll do 4 bars at speed. It's coming off that pre-bend at B18. Some dirt. And we have a full bend at B15, and then a half bend after that. And then a bend for the 17, B17, and then a pre-bend at 17 and bring it down. Then we have this. So at the 20th fret, we do that. Da 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 down. Slide down, and we'll do a C7, which is the same thing we see in the chorus. Then we do it again, and that ends off that measure. Let's do that slow again. Continuing with measure 75, I'm going to play the last little bit of measure 74, which is this. Let's play that slow. So for context, we have that coming out of the last measure, and then 75 starts with. So, starting with this 20 on the E string, slide down and slide into this. Coming up on the E15 to the B13, turning to that 14 on the G. Then we do this, double stops. So we're on D15 and G14, and we go, and then we have the 2 middle strings barred at the 12th fret. So from the top. Before returning to the some vibrato, then we continue with the ending it with that bend. One more time, slow. Measure 78, coming in from this part here, I'll just do a little bit of the last measure. And then real slow with that pickup again. Starts with this note coming down on the B15. So slow with an explanation. Coming off that, our measure starts like this. Then on the E15 and the B15, 2 on the B13, then the G14, bunch of bends. The last bend is a fast one with a pull off, so we're bending at the B15, pulling off to 13, and then landing on the G14. Then we have this. Let's explain that a bit. We're barring at the 13th fret on the G and the B, hitting them at the same time. And then we're coming up really quickly with that B13 and then hitting the G14. So together. And then with this chord, which is the G14 and the B13, sliding it down 1 fret. And then down 1 more fret. And we're starting our rhythm. Like that. So slow. And for that part, you can just kind of hit the G12 before hitting the full chord and moving it down a fret. So slow that part. Then we're doing a slide from the G8 into 9, and then picking the B8 and E8 sliding that down 2 frets and hitting both at the same time. So then we have this lick in the 8th position. For that final lick, we're bending up from the G10 here, then pulling off to 8 and landing on D10, and then doing the whole thing again with pull-offs. 10 to 8 on the G, and then 10 to 8 on the D. Let's start from this part. Before we go into this, we're doing a slide up from the A 10 to 12, and then barring the D10, G10, B10. We're going to strum that a couple times. Then with our 3rd finger, we're going to hit the D14 to change the chord like this. It goes just like that. Then we're going to go hammer on from the 10 to the 12 on the A. And we're going to pedal off that A12. Let's play that from the start. So that's the neat part about that, with that bar at the 10. Really changing the tonality of the chord like that. And then we're back into the chorus. So the chorus is after the first solo are much more aggressive. We have some of the B10 extra note in there, like I'm not going to show exactly what he does, just go way more aggressive. Maybe not that aggressive, but you get the idea. Make that part your own. After that, measure 1 and 2, we have something I'm calling the interlude, which is this part. Let's just take a look at those notes. Pretty simple. It's played kind of slow relative to the speed of the tune, so it's not too bad. Starting on the G9, G12, B13, E12, and then come back down, B13, G12, G9, and then D10. That's 2 measures. And once or twice he slides into them. After that we have 2 measures of the F9 chord. And I'd ask that you pay special attention to the muted strumming. So each one of those measures starts with a muted strum, and then the chord, and then ends with 2 muted strums. So, and then it repeats again, starting with a muted strum. And that gives you the kind of weird illusion of 3 muted strums in between those 2 measures of F9 chords. I'll show you fast to see if you can pick it up. So in the middle of those 2 chords we have this 1, 2, 3 muted strumming. I'll do it slow now to show you what I mean. So it may not seem like much, but I use it as a little measuring marker to see where I am in that. Slow. And that part he slows down before going into a final. beginning of ending solos, which we'll get to next. Measure 116 is the first of 2 outro solos. He's coming off the interlude that he's slowed down, and he does this. So we'll go over that real quick. We have that F9 chord, which he strums. We do this. This is kind of neat, a bend with the first finger on the G8, up. Then we repeat these notes. That's on the A10, and then 8 to 10 on the D. We do 3 of those, and then we go. So coming up to that E8, we go 8, 10 on the B, bend on the E10, B10, and then end with the E8. From the top there. This is kind of nice. We do a pull off from the B11 to the B8, hit the G11, and then slide from the B8 to the B7. Then we have a pull off hammer on from D10 to D8, landing on the A10, and then coming back hammer on from 8 to 10 on the D. So slow. Coming out of measure 119, one of the outro solos, he starts things back up with a single D10. And he starts speeding this up. Then he starts adding muted down-ups in between. And then he transitions into an octave chord. So we have the E8 and the D10 with the muted A in between. And we have that chord with a muted down-up in between, like this. So whole measures of these, and he's leading back into the progression, the E, C5, A, F9, A thing. So let's just do that the way I hear it on the recording. And then to get back into the progression, he does a neat thing. He does a half bar where we do this. Just this weird little half bar in there where he hits the low part of the C5, muted down up, and then high before going back down low. And I think he actually hits an open E there, but we'll just have it do the low part of the chord for the purpose of this tutorial. So that little half measure. And then he does a 124, he does a modified strum where he goes. So he's doing a double strum high. So high, low, high, high, low, high, low, high, low. And then he's back to the A, F9, and then A again. And we're doing that modified A minor with the E8. So it's just a neat rhythmic thing he uses to get back into the tune. So let's just do that whole thing slow. Here's that little half measure. Going into measure 128 is chorus 4. This is very aggressively strummed, and it differentiates a bit from the patterns we've heard before. Here's some of them. And later on in measure 140, he even does stuff like that's. So it really, really changes it up there. He's getting very aggressive. And then that leads into another interlude, which is the same as we've heard before, until measure 148. So it goes into it the same. Then he does this lick. And I don't know if it's guitar 1 or 2. I think it's Mayor. The mix is up and down all throughout the tune. But what he's doing there is he does the melody like we've heard before. And then he starts with the chord shape, the F9. But he's got his pinky on the G10. So we have our second finger on the A8, first finger on the D7, and we've got our pinky on the G10. We're doing this. So with my pick, I'm going down on the 8th fret of the A, down on the 7th of the D, and then with my second finger, I'm pulling up on the G10. And I'm almost doing one whole motion. If you're not used to that kind of thing, or it's a bit too fast, because he does play it quite fast, and this is not exactly what he plays. What he actually plays is far weirder, as you can see in the tab, and I don't think there's a lot to be learned from teaching that. If you're having problems with that, just pick the outside two notes, the A8 and the G10. And do whatever you need to fill all the rhythms of those two measures. So however long that ends up being. Ending off with 2 chord strums like that. So that's a neat little bit he throws in there. Measure 158 is the final outro solo. So what we're doing there is we're strumming our F9, and I'll just play through it slowly. Last note is picked with the finger, because we're going into some finger stuff after that. Finger stuff. So, explanation. We have the F9, and then on the G10, we're hitting it and then bending it up into the barred 8th fret, bottom 2 strings, bending the E10, and then hitting it bent and pulling it down into a pull off to the 8, and landing on the 10 on the B. And then bending the E11, and then picking 11 to 8, pulling off 11 to 8 on the B, landing on the G10. And then the next measure starts like this. So we're starting with a double pick on the bottom 2 strings barred at the 8th fret, and then pulling off from 11 to 8 on the B, and then doing this. So picking on the G11 to 10, pulling off to the 8, landing on the D10. So, and then we repeat that on the B string again, pulling off 11 to 8. Same thing here on the G. This time we're hammering back onto the G and then hitting the B8. So then we're doing this. So all together real slow. So for that last bit, we're sliding up from the A10 and then hitting the G10 with our second finger. Measure 160, we have a bunch of double stops coming off that last lick. take a look at that. So double stops are 2-note chords per se, and we're dealing with two shapes here, a major shape and a minor shape. So this is the first shape, coming off that last lick. That's one of the reasons we play that last note with our finger, because we're gonna use our pick for the note closest to you, and then the finger for the note closest to the floor. So the shape right now is A12 and G10. We're going to pull that down 2 frets. And then we're going to pull it down 2 frets again, but we're going to change the shape to this. This is the minor shape. So this next shape is the A8 and the G7. Then we're going to pull that down 2 more frets holding the same shape. So it goes like that. Major, minor. And you pluck it and slide. Pluck, slide. Pluck, slide. So let's play that from the top. And then we're going to come right back up to where you were. The A12 and G10. And we're going to change the descending order of the shapes now. We're going to, the second time it's like this. He changes this, but he does. Sounds kind of neat. So we're going from that major shape with the fret in between the two. So that's the second chord now is a 10 on the A, 9 on the G, 8 on the A, 7 on the G, and then back to the major shape. We have a 7 on the A, 5 on the G, and then 5 on the A, 3 on the G, and then we end off with a 3 on the A, 2 on the G. And these last two, you just cycle between them. You slide back up. He does about 7, then he just leaves it like that. So let's do that slow. Bunch of times, and then we just hang out here on the A5, G3 into the next part. Measure 164, we're in the stretch here. On that C9, no 5 chord. Let's do that part slowly. So we're coming up off that double stop at the 5th position with our 3rd finger on A5 and our 1st finger on G3. We're sliding up on the A5 to the 10th fret. A bit of an explanation. Sliding from the A5 to 10. We're coming up on the, so 8, 10 on the D, 8, 10 on the G, bend on the 10th fret of the G, then bar the 8th fret, we're hitting the B and E, bending on the E10, coming back down the 8 and B8, and then bending at the 11, full step and then a half step. Coming back down on that E8, B8, pulling off from 10 to 8 on the G, 2 on the D10, vibratoing that, and then a little slide from 8 to 9 on the G, ending off on the D7. Then we come up to the G14, and then the bend is actually done at the E15, but you can do it at the 16 to hit it. That's the note you're going for. And then we're quickly kind of picking the B, 15, and 13, and ending off on the G14, and then this C9, no 5 chord. And Mayer frets that with his thumb. So we have the thumb on 8, we're barring the 7th fret A, 1st finger is on the D8, and then we're also hitting the G7. And he tremolo strums that. In later live tunes, he goes into that. slide the chord shape up 1 fret. I think that's Every Day, or whatever song it is. I've got a tutorial on it. If you check out, I'll post the link here if you want to check it out. So let's go through that slow, and we're done with the Mayor stuff. There we go. This was a very challenging tutorial to do because of the transcription, it being a live tune and all. So after this, we're going to look at the Guitar 2 parts. They're very strange. Maybe a lot of people aren't going to check this part out, but they're there if you want them. If not, thanks for watching. We hear John Mayer Trio. We're thinking we're hearing 3 people. But Try was recorded in September 2005 in Nashville, and he was joined on stage by Chalmers Spanky Alford, famous gospel rhythm guitarist and session player that Mayer must have been a fan of. And unfortunately, the guy passed away 3 years after that, and I think this was his last public performance. So in measure 8, you hear a second guitarist do this. And that's your first indication that there's 2 guitarists on this track, at least it was for me. So let's look at that. He does a lot of tasty stuff. He's tracked left in the mix, and Mayer is right, and sometimes he's brought into center. It's very hard to discern the rhythm parts for the second guitar, but I did my best. That's where you're going to see blocks in the tab. So let's look at that first lick. So we're starting in the 8th position. We're bending up on the E11, hitting the 8, and then 11-8 on the B. And then 11-10 on the G, then a little hammer on from 10 to 11, and then 8, 10, 8, 10 on the D. And it's a kind of off time that he enters into it. So that's some of the things he does. Afterwards, when Mayer is into the rhythm, Chalmers will join him on A minor 7ths, like that. So when Mayer is doing the A, the second guitarist waits, and then halfway through he goes. So that's just barring the 12th fret, and then hammering on at the 14 on the D, and then the 13 on the B, like that, and then ending our pinky at the 15th fret on the E. And then he kind of just doubles some of the other stuff. And then when Mayer goes to the low A, he does the high A again. Sometimes doing rhythms like that. A lot of hammer-on chords. Almost in the third and fourth beats of the measure. So where Mayer would go. Chalmers would sit out the first one, and when Mayer is here, he'd play that, and then double this, and then when Mayer does this, he'd do that. So just high coloring chords in the high end, while Mayer takes care of a lot of the low end stuff. So that's an example of some of the little colorings he'll do. For the chorus, for example, measure 30, when Mayer is doing, second guitarist will go so for that first bit, for the that C7, he's kind of got a C major chord going. So we're just doing 10 on the D, 9 on the G, and then 8 on the B, and we're hammering on to the B10. And always coming in halfway through the measure. Da-da. For the next one, we're sliding that shape up. So we've got the D11, G10, B9. We're sliding that up 2 frets. So the first one was hammered on. The next one is up a fret and slid. So we're sliding with our third finger from the D11 to the D13. And then he joins them on the F9. And then sometimes for the low A, he'll come up high again to that A minor 7. So, da-da, 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 da-da. And it's different every single time. Measure 42 on Guitar 2, we hear something slightly distinct. We hear this by Guitar 2. I thought Mayer was doing parallel octaves at one point. But I realized, no, he's not. It's the second guitarist doing tasty fills. So for there, he's doing the kind of C minor, joining Mayer on the rhythm. But at this point, he stacks the third finger at the E10, second finger at the G10, and then we slide that up to the 12th fret before going back down to our chord shape. And then for the A, he goes up to the A minor again. And he's hammering on from the B13 to the B15. And then for the F9 part, he kind of mutes a bit and does this. These really high double stops. So he strums muted, and then he sounds these two strings. That's the B10 and the E8. So he sounds those, 2 scratches. And then he shifts that up 2 frets and does a little slide up before going back down again. So the whole thing is like that. So it's the same shape. And then for the A, he goes back up high. Usually ending off with a high E15 in the second half of the measure. So if he's playing along to verse 2, it would sound like this. Just tasty little high chords that kind of fill in the bass stuff that Mayer's doing. For measure 58, Guitar 2 in the bridge does this, as Mayer's doing the take it easy now, keep your damn mouth shut. Just adds a little bit of coloring like this. And we're in the solo. So right off the top, he skips that first C7, sets that out. For the D7, Guitar 2 does this. So that's first finger on the G10, hammering on to the 12. All the while, you've got your second finger on the B11 for this. So it's really quick. He sets the next chord out. And then down in the A, he does this. That's just a slide up from the D5 to 7, and then hitting the G5. And then really quickly, we come up with this. That's a hammer on from G7 to 9 while holding down the B8. And then we have the D7, and we kind of hammer it on like that. So we bar everything at the 10th fret, and we're hammering on the A12 and then the G11. And then we go back to that F9 chord, and we're just going, hammering on that 8 to 10 on the B. And it's kind of like really quick, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4 before Mayer rips into the solo. So some more tasteful note choices from Guitar 2. For measure 66, the solo, Guitar 2 does a variety of things. Sometimes he's sliding in from a B major to a C major. So the progression again is C to A minor to F9 to A again. So the Guitar 2 would do something like this for the C part. And then for the A, we're up at the A minor 7, hammering that on. F9 usually plays alongside Mayer. And then the A again, it's almost always up high. Occasionally for the C part, he'll do this. He'll just play around in the bottom part of the chord, doing stuff like hammer-ons from B8 to B10, and hitting this high E8 here before going up to the A minor 7th again. With that high E augmentation. Occasionally for the C part, he'll do this. He'll slide up from a G minor 7 and just stay up there for the next part because he's already in A then. So to demonstrate, here's the C part. He'll go, and then for the A part, see how it just changes a tiny bit? So you're hitting the last 4 strings or last 3 strings of that G minor 7 to A minor 7. There's some kind of tonality that ties it to C. And then when you hit that A root note in that A minor 7, that's A, and then F9. So the bass is very heavy in this. Pino Palladino is really laying it down and booging it. So he doesn't have to do a whole lot. So again, it's mostly just coloring off the top. Starting at measure 132, we hear some lead licks out of Guitar2. So it's a bit different. We start off with barring the 8th fret at the high E and B, and then sliding from the G7 to 9, hitting that again at the barred E fret, and then doing a D chord shape, starting at the 10th fret of the G. So we have the G10, B11, E10, sliding that up 2 frets. So then the next part is sliding from G11 to 12, and then barring the 11th fret on the B and E, and then stacking our fingers on the G13 and the E13, and then sliding that up to the 15th. So then we do this country lick with our first finger and pick. So we're sliding from the G13 14, hitting the E13, sliding that down to the 12 and E11, and then stacking our fingers on the 10th fret, G10, E10, and then 8th fret, G8, E8. And then he's just doing his A minor 7 thing. So Guitar2 measure 136, there's more licks being thrown in between Mayer's chorus playing. So between the dry, we have this from Guitar2. So that's B10, hammer on from G8 to 9, and then 10 to 8 on the D, and then 10 to 9 on the A. And then the next chord, he just kind of waits and then plays it with Mayer. And then this one's neat. So we're sliding up from the A10 to 12, and doing that same shape we did before, the double stops, in this rhythm. And then the very last one when Mayer's playing in the A. So it fits in really nice to the playing that Mayer's doing. In the holes, he'll insert these licks. Guitar2 measure 140 to 143 has some beautiful guitar work. He's just ripping these licks off. It's really cool. So down here, we're pulling off from on the low E from 5 to 3, and then hitting the A3, going back, and then sliding up from 5 to 7 on the A. And then up here we have the 10th fret. Same kind of rhythm, so 10 to 12, back to 10, and then D10, 12 to 10 on the A, and then bending up the D12 twice. And then down to the E8, and then we have 10, 8 on the B, bending on the E10, and then this lick. So starting on the E8, and then 11 to 8 on the B, and then 11, 10, 8 on the G, and then we do this twice, 10 to 8 on the D, before going 10, 9, 8 on the A, and then 11, 8 on the E. Full of licks, this guy. Other than that, Guitar2 can be heard in the final outros and the interlude. On the second pass, as it's coming down, he's on the B13 going, just doing some little high note things, just. And the very last pass, when Mayer's slowing it down, right here, Guitar2 has G14 and B15, and he slides that up, and then back down, and then hits an F7 way up high. Mayer's doing a solo, and Mayer's final chord, the Guitar2 will play the C7. And then he's pretty much done. So that was just a quick look at the Guitar2 part, just some tasty stuff in there. Everything that I could pull out of the audio is in the tab, but it's not complete just because of the mix. And if you stayed to watch it this long, you're serious about your Mayer. Thank you. You are totally gonna owe me. Okay, 2 guitars, listen. Hear that? Wait, let's hear it again. So how can John Mayer go when he's playing? So here they're laughing at you over there. We're going to slow it down now. Yep. That's it. You owe me. For the background, I'm going to use Yoda, because he's going to be like, try, because in Star Wars it's like, there is no try, only do. What do you mean Yoda's an asshole? Because he took your flashlight? That doesn't mean he's an asshole, it just means he doesn't like you. Or he needed to see and it was dark. You're being difficult.